Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Princess and the Human. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 20, Partial Malting. With a nod, Githey confirmed the contents of the last crate and marked the final set of her imports complete. Some of her substances had been quite expensive, but, well, she wasn't the one paying for them. She had been tasked to prepare for any medical emergencies that Taishtri visitors might end up having. Sure, one would expect them to arrive with their own medical emergency kits. After all, that was just common sense when visiting another planet with different resources. But still, the princess wanted to make sure, not to mention, that one might also argue that it was the duty of the host to properly accommodate their guests, especially since the Taishtri had a history of getting accidentally insulted by the king and queen before the princess took over. And as long as one could afford it, over-preparing was better than under-preparing. Bring the boxes to my office. I'll sort through everything myself there, she ordered, and the servants went back inside. Thank the first ones, we haven't had any serious medical emergencies within Nadine so far. While her incredibly long life allowed the small alien to have knowledge in vast array of fields, Githey doubted that her understanding of general education included detailed medical training. Of course, there was still the issue of her nightmares, but the princess had mentioned that they might have made some progress in that regard. A shame that she couldn't take her escape pod with us. Our engineers would have loved that. Wait, if her pod was built with any competency, shouldn't it have included a first aid kit? Damn it. Why do I only think of that now? That could have been invaluable. Dr. Githey? Upon hearing her name getting called, the doctor turned to find one of the palace's maids standing next to her. Lady Nadine requests your presence. I'm coming. Did she specify the problem? No. But it's not about her. It's something with her highness, though it didn't appear to be an emergency. It would probably still be better not to let them wait too long. They await your presence in the bathhouse. The bathhouse? Was there an accident? No. She said that it wasn't an emergency, but why? Well, only one way to find out. Even though the baths themselves were not in use at the moment, the air inside the bathhouse was fairly warm and damp, and she soon found out the reason why. Nadine was in one of the rooms, and next to her was a line of wet towels that seemed to cover something. Also, Nadine looked wet as well for some reason. What are you doing? The doctor inquired, curious about the scenery in front of her. The alien girl looked up. Ah, Doc, it's about Her Highness. She seems to have a partial malting. I have an idea of how to help her, but I wanted to make sure that it was just that. That's why I called you. Not seeing how that related to the situation at hand, Githey decided to first stay on topic with her questions. How come you know about partial malting? I thought your species doesn't molt. Yes, but some animals of my homeworld do. It's a bit different. They shed their old skin instead of melting it off, but the principle should be the same, I think. Anyway, I read that partial malting happens when the animal is under a lot of stress, which Her Highness definitely is. The hot towels apparently help, so I tried it. The doctor glanced towards the towels. So Her Highness is... Yes, I see. She sighed. You can come out of there, Your Highness. This isn't going to do anything. Nadine's cheerful expression shifted into one that appeared disheartened. Her face truly had a lot of muscles. Githey needed to record all of these expressions at some point. Was I wrong? The small alien asked in an apologetic voice. Fascinatingly, no. At least not entirely. Stress-induced partial malting is indeed a thing, and yes, Her Highness certainly is a prime candidate for that. The thing that you got wrong is that the stress caused some parts of the malting too late, not too early. And, give me a moment. Githey pulled out her datapad and opened the princess's medical records. Yes, Her Highness has malted 3 cycles and 147 days ago, meaning while it is due soon, it shouldn't happen until 40 days from now, at the earliest. Probably a bit later than that. Some body parts melting early can happen in old age, when our shell as a whole has gotten softer, but she is way too young for that. I don't even know what could cause it at her age. I need to examine that. Oh, I see, she said, in a dejected tone. And I thought I could finally do something in return. Guess the towels won't help then. I, at least, never heard of that method. We treat partial malting by artificially melting the hard parts with a very mild acid. Some even use it to intentionally malt early. It's debatable whether or not it is healthy, but sometimes people want to prevent it from happening during an inconvenient time. The new shell is usually developed far enough around 1/3 of a cycle before the malting occurs naturally, but one should still wait until it... The bathhouse got silent except for the background noise of the servants working. A thought began to form in Gathay's mind as she recalled the results of some of her tests. "Doc, still there?" Nadine's voice pulled her back into reality. "You wouldn't happen to have recently had extensive physical contact with Her Highness, would you?" The alien girl cocked her head. "Yesterday night. Yes, why? And were you secreting while you did that?" She blinked. Was I what?" "The tissues I analyzed. One of your discharges was slightly acidic. If that soaked in long enough, her current shell should be old enough, it could have the same effect as a malting tincture." Back then, she had simply been intrigued by it, but in hindsight, she should have paid more attention to it. There were some plants that produced the acid as a defense mechanism, but while she had never heard of animals doing the same, it wasn't impossible. That seemed to click with Nadine, whose facial color got slightly redder. The snot, yes, I was crying a bit, but the cavity covered half of her abdomen, and I didn't, shit. You remembered something?" Before answering, Nadine swept her hand over her forehead and showed her liquid that had accumulated there. "Sweat. My body uses it to regulate its temperature. I don't know what factors influence its pH, but on average it's slightly acidic if I recall correctly. Depending on what your shell is made of, it can actually dissolve it. And last night, I woke up drenched. I don't know the scale of the numbers you are referring to, but what you're basically saying is that I'm more or less covered in acid, yes, but not strong, as you said. Probably just because of her malting was so close. I mean, nothing happened when you touched me." It sounded more like Nadine was trying to convince herself instead of the doctor, but Gathay still nodded in affirmation. "True, but our contact was brief. Therefore, we shouldn't take any chances. I need you to give me some samples of all three secretions mentioned so that we can be sure. And, Your Highness, I would like to ask you to come to my office so that I can examine the effects that were caused on your shell." She then realized the princess was still lying under the shells. "Your Highness, as I said, this isn't going to help. You can stand up." "Your Highness?" After receiving no reaction, Nadine approached her and lifted the towels covering the princess's head. "I think she's asleep." "Ah. Well, in that case, I take back what I said. While doing nothing regarding the molting, it did help her in some way." End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, HenryTheRed, Casper Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.